All right, I'm Sergeant First Class Justin Blewett with the United States Army Parachute Team, the Golden Knights. I'm the head master parachute rigger for the parachute team. And today we are going to do a flat packing class. We're going to start with the basics. All the way down here in your container, underneath the first main flap, we're going to have your pull-up cord. So we're just going to get the pull-up cord prepped. And in our closing loop, we'll use that later. Come here, first thing we're going to do when we land, we're going to stow our brakes. So we're going to pull the eyelet through the ring, put the tab through the eyelet, and stow the top of the brake. And then we're going to stow the bottom of the brake, ensuring that your brake's fully seated. Again, pulling the cat eye through the ring, put the top of the toggle through the cat eye, and stow your toggle, the top of the toggle. Then we're going to stow the bottom of the toggle, right? Make sure it's seated. I know most of you have never seen a collapsible or a split slider before, so I'm going to show you how to assemble your slider. First, we're going to grab the rear set of lines. That rear grommet is going to go towards the canopy, and you're going to lay that out flat. Again, you're going to grab the rear riser. And that rear grommet, once you find that rear grommet, is going to go towards the top of the canopy, like so. Lay that out flat. Here we have these 5 red tabs. Those tabs are going to go through the grommets. And then we're going to lock it in place with this red lanyard here. I like to find the center, make a bite, and you're going to push it through by about 1.5 to 2 inches each one of these loops. Over time, this lanyard will develop a little bit of memory, so it'll make it pretty easy to assemble your slider. So that's how you assemble your slider. So we're going to grab the top of our slider, okay, which is going to be the rear riser, the rear set of lines. You're going to grab the rear lines in your left hand. You're going to grab the front set of lines in your right hand, and we're going to run them up, leaving the slider down with the container. This is going to put a 1/4 turn in the parachute. So right now we're looking at one end panel and the stabilizers. The front of the parachute is in my right hand. That's where my nose is, and the tail is in my left hand. We're going to bring it down, and we're just going to do a nice big sweep to lay it out. How it lands is not necessarily how it's going to be as far as the finished product, so don't worry about being perfect when you throw it down the first time. So we're going to flip the whole thing over so you can see the other army on the other side. This is the other end panel and stabilizers, and we're going to find our first cell, and we're going to count them out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to take this and we're going to lay that out nice and flat. What that's going to do is it's going to separate our A's from our B's. We have our A's, B's, C's, and D's, as we remember from AFF, and then our steering all the way in the back. Now, your cadre may change it up and have you use these packing tabs. So there's 7 packing tabs. You can also count these 7 packing tabs out if that's what the cadre wants you to do. And the same principle, we're going to hold the parachute in place with one hand, and we're just going to give it a flip with the other hand. Same result, just 2 different methods. These start tracks open pretty brisk, so what we like to do is take all these nose openings and place them inside. This is the other side panel. We're going to place it inside that nose, and we're going to roll it up tight to help slow that opening. Being careful not to roll your lines over, okay? Just roll the top, nice and easy. Now we're going to keep positive control of the nose. We're going to keep positive control of our A's and B lines. Just drawing a direct line right up where I put my hand. We're going to put our A's right on top of our B's, like so. We're going to come to the back side. We're going to repeat this process. We're going to find our 7 packing tabs. Once you've got your 7 packing tabs in one hand, we're gonna maintain positive control of the parachute with our left hand, and we're gonna do another flip, like so. That is gonna separate our C's and our D's. We're gonna have our C's and D's, they're kind of close together, but they are here, down there with the cascade. So from there, I'm gonna grab my A's and B's and my C's, just my C's. There's a direct line that comes right up this seam from the C's. And at the same time, I'm gonna slide the A's and B's underneath my C's, like so. All right, from here, again, your cadre may have you do it differently, but I found it's easiest to find the data panel, which is the very center of the canopy at the tail. We're gonna bring that tail up and we're gonna count out 8 steering lines, 2 at a time. 2, 4, 6, and 8. From here, we're gonna do one big karate chop, which is gonna pull our D's that are laying off to the side here into the center of the parachute. And we're gonna gather all those lines up, ensuring that we get all this material out from in between those lines to prevent line burn. We're gonna place all those lines back in the center. Maintaining positive control with either hand. You're then gonna find the data panel once again and bring the data panel down. Straight lines are happy lines. We're gonna come back down and get our slider. When picking your slider up, you're gonna grab the slider from the center in between the 2 rear sets of lines, and you're gonna flip it upside down. Remember our loop side that we worked with earlier. You're gonna want the other side, and you're gonna grab it from the very center. Keep it low to the ground, don't lift your lines up. It's gonna start putting tension on things where it doesn't need to be. Keep it low, and run that up right to the canopy. From here, you're gonna wanna make sure that your stabilizers are clear, free and clear, with no lines in between. Should look like little wings, like little squid wings. We're just gonna roll those in. From here, it's the basic same cocoon that you've always done in packing. We're gonna bring the data panel down just over the grommets. I'm gonna give it a good tight wrap at the bottom. Keep positive control with my knees, ensuring that my center line stays centered. We don't want this to start to walk to one side or the other. And we're gonna cocoon as normal. These are F111 parachutes, so they're gonna be a little bit easier in the cocooning process than a zero porosity parachute you may be used to. Go ahead and get all the air out. Here I like to prepare my bag. I do a little different bagging method. Again, your cadre may have you bag differently. This is not for everybody. This is just the way that works for me. So we're gonna make our first S-fold. Again, this F111 parachute material likes to stay where it's at. It's not like the ZP that you guys are used to. Make that first S-fold, just about 6 to 8 inches. We're gonna keep positive control of that, and we're gonna re-cocoon. We gain positive control of the entire parachute with one hand, grabbing both top skins on either side. Sweep up with my arm, and I'm gonna create another S-fold, roughly the same size as before. Now we're just gonna kind of gather up this mess, always being mindful when you're packing of your lines and your feet. So the bagging method that I like to use, I actually back the parachute up about 8 inches, 8 to 10 inches, bringing the bag with me. Then I pick the parachute up, place it on top of the bag, and then nice and easy, push forward to take the slack out of my lines. Now instead of trying to put the parachute in the bag, I'm simply going to wrap the bag around the parachute, which I have found to be much easier. From here, I'm gonna come underneath the grommets of the bag. I'm gonna lift the whole thing up. And then I use my forearm to control all this as we push all that material down into that bag. We're gonna drop it back down, and we're gonna do our first stow. Here on the Golden Knights, we have 4 and 3 grommet bags. If you have a 3 grommet bag, the 1 grommet in the center, it does not matter which side the lines go to when you start. If you have a 4 grommet bag, the lines are gonna stay centered. We're gonna make our first stow. Only about 3 to 4 fingers, nothing more. And we go back and forth and back and forth. Just an administrative note here. While you're in the Golden Knight Assessment and Selection Program, your cadre are not going to want you to be on your knees. We don't want to dirty our knees up. We're on show sites. When you're practicing this at home, you're not an old man like me. You're going to want to do this from a standing position. Get used to being bent over and working those legs, because this is more than likely how your cadre are going to have you do it. But the old men who've been here a while get to use their knees on the mat. We're not double stowing these, if you notice. We are single stowing these Dacron lines. They're nice and fat, so these tube stows should be about the perfect size to hold everything in place. Leaving about 12 to 18 inches, no more, of excess. We're gonna pick everything up, always keeping our bag in the same orientation. Never rotate your bag or twist your bag. We're gonna pick the lines up and the parachute, and we're just gonna drop it over the edge. Remember, we just rolled it, but it's still maintaining that proper orientation. We're gonna get our pilot chute and bridle out of the way. I like to start here with my risers. I like to bring this up on my knee. It gives this a natural contour. It makes these risers lay in here a little bit easier. So we're always gonna do toggles facing the reserve. Okay, so the toggle will face the reserve. Just place your lines down in the side of the container and stow your tuck tabs. When stowing these tuck tabs, remember, we are not going underneath this reserve riser. We're going underneath where this channel is for the tuck tab, all the way over, like so. Now we're just gonna make sure our lines are nice and clean. Here on the parachute team, everything is about presentation. So we don't wanna have a bunch of stuff hanging out of our container when it's closed. Just looks unprofessional. Make sure everything is tucked away. All right, now I'm gonna grab this top flap and the bottom flap of the main container, and I'm gonna hold them here with my left hand. I'm gonna rotate up my parachute and D-bag right on top of that flap, so it holds everything out of the way. We're gonna find our last stow, where our last stow is, and you're just gonna nice and gently and cleanly lay those lines down in the container. Pull up on each one of these sides of these flaps, and lastly, you're gonna grab this flap, this top flap, and pull the reserve up, and the whole parachute will settle in there nicely. Move ourselves up here a little bit. Lastly, closing the container. All the containers on the Golden Knights are going to be closed bottom, top, left, right. Again, bottom, top, left, right. So we're going to take our bridle. We have a little hesitator Velcro here. I'm going to make a small S-fold on top of the D-bag. Run my pull-up cord over top of this S-fold. Notice that S-fold is only about 2 inches. And it's up top. Keep that bridle up top. We're gonna drop all our weight on the parachute, and pushing from the bottom of the parachute, pulling towards myself, we're gonna pull the pull-up cord through. We're gonna maintain positive control with our knee on that closing loop, doing our left flap the same way. Again, presentation is key here on the Golden Knights. So over here, I'm gonna put my hand right in this corner, because we don't want this all sticking out. As I pull, it gives it a nice clean appearance. Readjusting, dropping my knee again to control that closing loop. We're gonna take the Velcro, mate our Velcro. Notice our bridle is still on the top side. And we're gonna do our last flap, our right flap. Again, putting pressure in that corner and pulling your closing loop through. Now, if you notice, we can see the closing pin here. You're gonna want the closing pin on the underside of the bridle. On the underside of the bridle. And it's gonna go up in direction. Always up in direction. So when we're moving around or sitting in the aircraft, it's not pushing that pin out of its seated position. Anytime we pull our pull-up cord out, we're always gonna go in the direction the pin is facing so we don't disturb our pin. Go ahead and stow your closing, or your pull-up cord rather, and we're gonna prepare our bridle. If you have a little excess, this excess can simply be tucked in. That's not a big deal. Again, everything is about looking clean. We do a lot of pin checks here on the Golden Knights, so when you stow your bridle, do not put it underneath this last flap, because during pin checks, that can pop out, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put it in between the first and second flap. I don't know if everybody can see that. In between the first and second flap. And then we're gonna work our bridle off to the side into this corner. It's gonna run down this channel all the way to your BOC. And now we can close our main flap. And lastly, folding pilot chute. There are a million ways to do this, but your cadre are only gonna have one for you. I'm gonna show you my version, and I hope that suffices. Lay it out flat, parachute material on the downside. We're gonna do a 1 fold in half, keeping our hacky out. 2/3 folds. Bridle still in front of me. I'm gonna bring the bridle to me, make one more half fold, and then we're gonna S-fold our bridle. Don't S-fold all of this bridle. You wanna have a little bit of slack so it can go down and back. Otherwise, it's gonna start pulling things out. So we've got enough slack. I like to do a little 3rd fold here, and then I kind of roll the other side. Now, if we notice here, I have a bulky side and I have a smooth side. Always the smooth side facing out up against this elastic band, so you don't have a monkey fist or a hard pull. We also never turn our rigs up on top of itself. All your life-saving cables run through the top of this container. So we're gonna turn the container on its side, make a little bit of room for that pilot chute, and we simply stow our pilot chute. Give a little push to make sure it's seated, and you're ready to jump. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you luck. Best of luck in GKAS. Hope to see you this fall.